All right, so I'd like to start by thanking the organizers to inviting me for this fantastic conference. We talk a lot in academia about making an impact and changing people's lives for the better. And this research, I think, is a fantastic example of that. I mean, the impact we've heard throughout this conference, the impact that defaults, automatic escalation, target date funds, all these things that have been implemented and have been done have on the savings outcomes of millions of individuals throughout the world. So there's certainly more to be done, and that's, I guess, good news for the academics in the room. Certainly more that we should do, but we should definitely celebrate this as certainly one of the good success stories. Now, when we think about retirement savings, we're essentially thinking about a two-dimensional problem. Okay, so first we need to think about how much we want to save, and second we think about how we want to invest those savings. So the savings decision and the portfolio decision. Okay. Now, the savings decision is definitely the most important one. Getting that savings rate right is much more important for welfare than getting that portfolio allocation right. And I say that even though most of my work is on the portfolio allocation side. Okay? But the truth is that the savings decision matters the most. Now, unfortunately, as academics or financial advisors, we can influence much more the portfolio than the savings. And just think about that nice gentleman there on the top left. I mean, it's very hard to go to people and tell them that we know what's best for them in terms of saving at every period of their life, and that they should save an extra 2% for retirement instead of going on a nice vacation now or buying the latest iPhone or whatever it is. I mean, it might persuade them for a while. Soon temptation hits, and they just creep out. Well, on the portfolio side, I mean, we heard about low financial literacy throughout. I mean, we go to these people, we tell them, hey, that money is there, invest in a target date fund. The money is there anyway. They have no idea what a target date fund is, but no idea what an alternative is anyway. So sure, sounds good enough. Put it there, who cares? And what we see is exactly that. We tell people target date funds are good. People are investing in target date funds more and more and more, and that's not a problem. On the other hand, on the savings side, we do have this evidence that people go into defaults. They look medium term, longer term. They find ways to get the money out. They move away from the defaults, essentially. Okay, so let me start then with the asset allocation decision. As I said, bigger success there, but we can probably still do better. So one thing we have with target date funds is that pretty much all of them cap the equity allocation, the risky share, about 90%, or even some of them at 80%. Okay? That's highly suboptimal. For young individuals, the risky share should be 120, 130%. I mean, we're talking about retirement savings here. Okay, so precautionary savings, where you should be very careful about how you invest that, it's elsewhere. It's not on your 401k. So retirement savings for young individuals should be 120, 130. Now, there's obviously a lot of reasons why you don't want individuals to take levered positions, but with a target date fund doing it on their behalf, it's not really a concern. In fact, for example, they could even achieve this through zero-cost leverage, right? A target date fund can just pool the wealth of the different target date funds, put that together, that's an interior solution. You have no leverage, then you just have a risk-sharing rule between them, and that's it, and you're done. And this could be one of the great benefits additionally that they can provide by allowing young individuals to get this optimal levered portfolio that they should get, but it's very costly or dangerous for them to do themselves. Another thing, we might even be more extreme and say, well, how about replacing target date funds altogether? I mean, age is, after all, just a rough proxy for the true state variable in the model, which is wealth to present value of labor income. Now, present value of labor income, of course, measuring it, explaining it to people, forget about it. But wealth to income, how about wealth to income? Is it unintuitive? Not really. I mean, you can go to people and you tell them, look, if your wealth to income is very high, then a lot of your expenditures are going to be financed out of that wealth. So you better be more careful about how you allocate that wealth. It's kind of intuitive. In fact, probably more intuitive than age. If you go to a sample of people who invest in target date funds and you ask them, why should your risky share decrease with age? Most of them won't be able to tell you why, or will give you a wrong answer, or a lot of them will actually say, what? My risky share decreases with age? That's what a target date fund does? They probably would even have no idea. Okay? So wealth to income, I think, would be just even better. Now, there are a few implementation issues. Happy to discuss those in the Q&A. Most important, I want to say that obviously I'm not suggesting that here. I'm not suggesting that for the US on the principle of don't rock the boat. Okay? Things are working well with target date funds. Maybe we can do a little bit better, but we don't want to confuse people by changing financial advice overnight and then pretend we actually don't know anything. But for a country that's starting from scratch, why not start with somebody that's closer to first best? If you're doing your switch DB to DC, maybe you want to start with somebody that's closer to first best, which might be that as opposed to age. Okay. What about the savings decision? Well, the savings decision is, again, a tougher problem. One of the reasons is one size doesn't fit all. The optimal savings rate varies significantly from person to person. The optimal portfolio does as well, but not as much, and again, the cost of deviation is smaller. Now, I just mentioned savings defaults. As we looked at their impact medium, longer term, it starts being a little bit weaker, but it's not weaker for everybody. The same research shows that when you look at low-income individuals and you look at young individuals, the impact is still quite strong there. And arguably, that's really the ones who want to impact more with this. I mean, if Elon Musk is not saving the right amount for retirement, I mean, maybe that's particularly interesting to the asset managers in the room because that's a lot of money. But as an academic, that's really not what keeps me up at night. So I think we're probably really maybe impacting the people that we really want to impact the most. Now, I could contrast that with actually a completely different system, which is the Australian or the Danish model. The Danish model has very, very large mandatory contribution rates every year. Okay, you enroll in this plan, you pay every year 10 or 12 or even 15% every year to retirement. That's it, no choice, mandatory. These people don't have a retirement savings problem. Or rather, the problem they have is that they have too much retirement wealth. Not that they would actually admit it. If you talk to them, they'll actually say, no, it's a great system, it's working fine, but I think it's clearly excessive. But maybe it's time to think about something in the middle, or something like a minimum mandatory contribution. Maybe that's a taboo thing around here, because I haven't heard it mentioned by anybody, so I don't know if that's a taboo in the US to think about something along those lines. But the minimum mandatory contribution, think about forcing everybody to contribute at least 1 or 2%. I mean, 1 or 2% every year, you've pretty much solved the left tail problem, okay? Have you gotten the optimal savings amount for everybody at retirement? You haven't. But you've solved, to a large extent, the problem of poverty at retirement, accumulating that. And the advantage of a minimum mandatory contribution of 1 or 2% is that doesn't deal with the issue of heterogeneity. 1 or 2% minimum is optimal for pretty much everybody. Okay? So you can sort of have that. Concern, well, of course, people with financial literacy might think that's optimal. Procrastinators might stay there, so I'm not saying that's the default. The default stays, automatic escalation stays, all those good things stay. You just add a minimum mandatory, so you can't opt out fully. You have to go at least to that level. And of course, we also talked about this before. We can move away from one size fits all. Schlafman and co-authors have a great paper kind of looking at those things, but there are a lot of issues there, as was also brought up, essentially. Okay, so I'll just do a little bit of self-promotion here. So a recent paper I have with some co-authors who look at IRAs and study a lot of things about IRAs. I'm actually not getting into the details of what we studied there here. I'd just like to point out that one thing we have, so this figure 1 in the paper, is basically just showing that right now, if you look at the US, most retirement savings are by far in IRAs, not 401ks. I mean, it's more than 2 to 1. And I won't say IRAs are the Wild West, but, compared to 401ks, we have, we obviously don't have defaults, don't have automatic escalation, very few restrictions on the investment menu. So there's a lot that's out there, and maybe we want to start studying IRAs. Maybe they're the elephant in the room. I don't have a slide with a nice elephant in the room like Vicky did, but that's kind of what I'm calling it. Okay. The final plugin I want to do, it looks like I'll finish on time. Perfect. Is retirees. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about how people should save for retirement, coming up with great designs for retirement, this and that. How much do we study what people should do after retirement in terms of their portfolios, in terms of their savings? Very little. Olivia deserves a lot of credit from one of the big exceptions, Raymond as well. Other people in this room have done that, but for each paper that looks at the behavior of retirees, you have maybe 1,000 that look at the behavior before. I mean, you have very little that we have done, and as a result, there's very little advice we have to give these people. I mean, we tell them, use annuities, but how much? I mean, certainly we don't want them to annuitize everything, so how much annuities should they use? We talk about reverse mortgages, there's little take-up of this, and we need to think maybe about how we want to structure those better. The advice that's been around for a long time is actually move to a very conservative portfolio. Have there the standard picture from target date fund, flat for a while, then go down, down, down. You hit retirement, it's conservative, and just stick to that. Kind of going back actually to Vicky's talk the other day, saying, you're a woman, invest in bonds. For retirees, that's what we say. You're a retiree, conservative portfolio, invest in bonds, stick to it. There's absolutely no rationale for that whatsoever. Okay? There's no reason why retirees should have conservative portfolios, and it's creating unnecessary pressure on their savings, that they have to maintain the standard of living which savings are earning this very low return that is not justified by any means, essentially. Okay? So I'll just conclude again to say that pension plan design is basically one of the good success stories that we have in academia. We should be happy with it. But of course, there's much more than we can do, and maybe we can set very ambitious goals, like help this gentleman on the right. I'm not sure if we'll ever on the left, depending on how you're sitting. I'm not sure we'll ever be able to get that far, but one can always try.